do that. And my biggest fear was that, and I called up all the media and I told them this, and I was sort of afraid that somehow the police would get wind of it and bust me about as I was walking up to the courthouse, and I would never get a chance to make my statement. But anyway, I went there half an hour after the speech, and there was a video, the TV's, local TV and the school newspaper, and so I kind of made my statement, you know, a political statement, and then I smoked, and they, you know, took pictures and everything, and then it was like, okay, somebody call the police. And the press said, well, we're the press, we can't take part in this. We can't call the police. And so then I realized, okay, so I went across the street to the restaurant, and I actually had a half a joint in my hand, and I didn't want to go in the restaurant with the joint for fear, you know, that I would bring heat on this restaurant or something. So I asked the waitress, I gave her a quarter and asked her to call the police and tell them there's a man smoking marijuana out front. And so then I went back, and we waited for about 5 minutes, and the media said to me, well, we can't wait here forever. Did you call him or what? And I said, well, I asked the waitress to call him, and they said, well, Ben, you better go check. So I went back over, and the waitress said, well, I hadn't had a chance to call him yet. And so I got my quarter back, and I called 911, and I said, there's a man blatantly smoking marijuana in front of the courthouse, and you should send a car. And the woman said, oh, you know, she sounded concerned and said, yes, she'd get right on it. And I went back, and 3 cop cars drove by, and I was like waving and whistling like for a taxi cab, and they wouldn't stop. Crime in progress. And the media said, you know, and then they disappeared, and the media said, well, we can't wait here forever. And so I had always envisioned myself spread eagle on the car, you know, and so then I got up a little more nerve, and we all marched into the police station, and there's kind of a glass windows, and there was a little talk hole that you speak through. So I lit up a joint. I had about 2/3, and I lit it back up, blew smoke in through the talk hole, and said, is marijuana illegal? And she said, yes. There was a female officer. She said, yes, it is. And I blew in another smoke. I said, well, I'm smoking marijuana. And she said, are you trying to get in trouble? Don't you want to do that somewhere else? I said, you know, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. And, you know, and it's not something that I haven't done many, many times before. And she said, so have a lot of other people. And I said, yes, I know. And we talked a little bit more, and you know, it was funny because I originally had smoked until I just felt my speech slide just a little bit for the press, and then I got into the police station and I had to smoke again, you know, and I kept smoking to try to convince people, hey, you know, smell this, you know, I am smoking marijuana. And so finally she said, well, if you're trying to get in trouble, we can certainly accommodate you. And from my point of view, I was getting mad at this point. I was just like, look, lady, I'm standing here smoking marijuana, and I think you better do something about it. And so she said, fine, and she left to get someone else. And I was quoted in the school newspaper as saying at that point that, gee, I hope they arrest me soon, I'm getting awfully stoned. And, you know, so finally they came back, and they were actually quite polite, and I had, I don't know, about an inch of joint left, and they took that, and we went back, and they arrested me and did all that stuff. They were quite amazed that when they said my bail, I could have gotten out of jail for $75 bail, and you know, that was the bail bond to be. And I said no, I wasn't really interested in that. And I left. Actually, I talked this all over with my wife, and by the way, I have a wife and 6 children. And And one of the reasons that I wanted to do it was because I felt that they were always giving marijuana smokers a bad rap and kind of, you know, like the criminal type that would smoke marijuana, and I thought it was very unfair. And that they were, you know, nobody was standing up for marijuana, and that I actually felt that lives could be saved. I mean, I kind of justified it to myself that saying, if I do this, that maybe the law will change sooner, and if the laws change sooner, then lives will be saved, and that's more important than whether my kids are without me for, you know, a while I'm in jail or something. And so, you know, I kind of played it. I mean, I tried to play the best psychological game that I could play, and you know, so I fully intended to go in jail. And I told my wife, if you don't hear from me in 2 days, you know, come and see what's going on. And I really didn't know what was going to happen, but actually, the next morning, they kind of hustled me. I was like, you know, we know you own a house in Douglas County, and so you're safe, and we're going to let you out on your own recognizance and shoo, you know, we don't want you in jail. And actually, the jail's full, and I was sleeping on the floor that night, and the worst thing that could happen is that 100 people would have been with me. That would have really, really screwed things up. And so we went through all kinds of trial things and many visits to the courthouse and all that, and it finally came down to going to trial, and originally they had me for a felony, but they dropped it down to a misdemeanor because they were wrong. And we decided not to go with the jury trial because it had been 6 people, and we decided that if even my friends who smoke marijuana wouldn't come down and watch me get arrested, that what guy was going to have guts to stand up amidst the peer pressure of a jury and say, no, I don't think, you know, this is a bad crime. At least at that time. I mean, things have even changed, I think, for the better since then. But so our defense actually came down to freedom of speech, and we tried to say that it was like burning an American flag. And I thought that, you know, I could have burned an American flag and gotten the same kind of publicity, but actually I think, you know, I was much more creative, and I said, you know, I said something different by smoking a joint. And we showed the video, the TV video of the bust, which, and by the way, next day, like the headlines of the newspaper was "Pot Protester Begs to Be Arrested." And it was it turned out to be a funny story. I never could have written the script better than it came out, and it was a funny story, and it was an endearing story. I mean, straight secretaries in Topeka, Kansas thought, you know, it was just a funny story. And so I did lose. The judge, and we decided not to have a jury because we decided, my lawyer said, you know, the headline might be jury deliberates for a minute and a half. So we just let the judge do it, and he actually took about 30 seconds to decide the verdict. But we did give him some information like the Nadelman article and the DEA administrative law judge, and he, you know, he did listen some, and I didn't hold back. I never said I was sorry, and I told him that I thought, see, and the funny part was that he ended up saying that I had no respect for the law, and I turned around and I said, look, the press said that they weren't going to call the police. The waitress wouldn't call the police. The police wouldn't stop. The officer behind the window would not arrest me. And, you know, I'm the only one who was trying to be honest in Lawrence, Kansas that night, and you're telling me I don't have any respect for the law? I'm the one who's trying to promote respect for the law. And in fact, it's true that there isn't. And it came out 3 weeks later that, in fact, Lawrence, Kansas had kind of a de facto decriminalization for the last bunch of years, and that they admitted that they weren't arresting people for marijuana possession. They were just throwing it away, and that was your penalty to see your valuable stash going down the sewer. So I have used up my time. I might just quickly say that I used that as a springboard to go ahead, and I ran for political office, and I managed to get a whole lot of more press because of that. And I do plan, I've already told the press, and they asked me, I guess I should say that I was sentenced to 6 months in jail, and I had been quoted in the press that I would not pay a fine. I said, I'll do all the community service that you give me, but I will not pay a fine because that's throwing good money after bad. And so the judge sentenced me to 6 months in jail with a possibility of probation or parole after 2 months. And after 2 months, well, I was called before the judge, and he said I said what I would consider, and he said, well, he told me what it was going to be like urine tests, a random urine test. And it was actually, they were planning on charging me, I think it was about $30 a month, pay them to harass me. And I just said, no, those conditions were not acceptable, and that I would serve the remaining 4 months, which I did. And and of course then bragged that I had cost Douglas County $10,000 to keep me in jail for 6 months, which